If effort doesn't shift reality, what does? The answer is simple, but it changes everything. Reality is not something you build with struggle. It's something you tune into. Think of a radio. The songs aren't created when you turn the dial. They've been broadcasting the entire time. You don't beg the music to play. You don't rebuild the station. You simply align your receiver, and the sound comes through. That's how the universe works. Every possibility, the life of abundance, love, freedom, health, already exists, broadcasting in the quantum field. You don't have to invent it. You don't have to drag it into existence. You simply have to tune. Quantum physics has hinted at this for nearly a century. The double-slit experiment revealed that particles exist in multiple states at once until observed. This means that all realities are already possible, infinite versions of you, infinite futures, all waiting in superposition. Your observation, your awareness, collapses one version into form. That collapse doesn't happen through effort. It happens through focus, through the signal you embody. And here's the catch. Most people are tuning without realizing it. They keep their focus on the problem. They broadcast worry, stress, fear, and so the field reflects back more of the same. Not because it's punishing them, but because it's neutral. It only mirrors the frequency it's given. Spiritual traditions have been teaching this in different words for thousands of years. Neville Goddard called it living in the end, assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. He taught that you don't wait for results before you shift your state. You shift first, and results follow. Scripture puts it in another way. As you believe, so shall it be done. Not as you try, not as you chase. As you believe. Belief is tuning. Belief is alignment. Imagine logging into Netflix. Every day you click on dramas filled with conflict, and soon the algorithm fills your feed with more of the same. After a while, you might even think, this is all there is. But the truth is, thousands of other shows are waiting. The moment you click on something different, the entire feed reorganizes. Your life works the same way. You've been unconsciously clicking on the same patterns: fear, doubt, lack, and life keeps mirroring them back. But the library is infinite. Change what you click, and the feed changes. The reason most people overlook this is because tuning feels too simple. It doesn't satisfy the ego's craving for drama. The ego wants struggle. It wants the story of I fought, I sacrificed, I earned. But the universe doesn't reward struggle. It rewards coherence. This is why so many of your efforts may have felt empty. You were spinning the dial, jumping from one practice to another, never holding long enough to let the song play. I once knew a woman who said she wanted peace more than anything. She read every book, joined every workshop, tried countless techniques, but her focus was always on finding peace, which meant she was constantly affirming that she didn't have it. One day, she changed her approach. Instead of chasing, she asked herself, what does it feel like to already be at peace? She slowed down, breathed, and carried herself as though peace was already her natural state. Within weeks, people around her noticed the difference. Arguments dissolved faster. Work stress felt lighter. She wasn't searching anymore. She was tuned in. The peace didn't arrive from outside. It was already broadcasting. She just aligned with it. This is the shift in perspective. You're not fighting to create a new reality. You're not climbing a mountain to reach it. You are selecting from what already exists. The moment this clicks, life stops feeling like a battle. The weight falls away. And instead of asking, how do I make this happen? You begin asking, what frequency am I tuned into right now? Because here's the truth. Reality isn't waiting for you to struggle. It's waiting for you to align. And the next step is learning how to actually step out of the old broadcast so you can choose a new one. That begins with awareness. If reality is tuned rather than forced, then the first move you must make is this. Step out of the old broadcast you've been unconsciously living. Most people never do this because they don't realize they're trapped inside a story. They confuse who they are with what they've been experiencing. It's like sitting in a movie theater. You become so absorbed in the film that you forget you're sitting in a seat, watching light on a screen. For 2 hours you laugh, cry, or panic, as though the story is happening to you. But the moment the credits roll, you remember, I was never the character. I was the observer the whole time. That's how life works too. You've become so absorbed in your character, the one who struggles with money, the one who is unlucky in love, the one who feels anxious or unworthy, that you forgot you were watching the story, not living inside it. Another way to see it, imagine a chess game. For most of your life you've believed you're a pawn stuck moving in small, predictable steps. You compare yourself to the other pieces, envious of the queen, threatened by the rook, fearful of the king. But awareness flips the perspective. You're not the pawn, you're not even the queen. You're the board itself. The pieces come and go. The board remains. That's awareness. Realizing you are not the moving parts of your life. You are the space in which life happens. Modern science echoes this. Neuroscientists call it meta-awareness. Studies show that when you notice a thought, when you step back and say, I'm having an anxious thought instead of I am anxious, your brain activity changes. The default mode network, which is responsible for replaying old loops, quiets down. In that moment, you're no longer lost inside the story. You've interrupted it. You've created a gap. And in that gap, something new can emerge. Spiritual teachers have said the same thing for centuries. Meditation masters remind us, you are not your thoughts. You are the witness behind them. Eckhart Tolle describes it as the space of awareness. In Scripture, it appears in verses like, "Be still and know." Stillness reveals that you are not the noise. You are the one listening. Awareness is the crack in the wall of your old reality. The moment you stop identifying as the character, the prison door swings open. I once spoke to a man who felt trapped by stress. He said, "It's just who I am. I'm always the anxious one." So I asked him to sit quietly and simply notice his thoughts, like clouds passing through the sky. At first he resisted. "But the thoughts are me." Yet after a few minutes he paused and said, "Wait, if I can watch the thoughts, then I can't be them." That was his breakthrough. For the first time he realized he wasn't his stress. He was the awareness behind it. Within weeks, his relationship with anxiety shifted. The stress didn't vanish overnight, but it no longer controlled him. He had stepped out of the story. Here's why this shift is so important. As long as you think you are the story, you keep tuning to the same channel. The broke person tunes to more lack. The anxious person tunes to more chaos. The unlucky person tunes to more disappointment. But once you realize you're the awareness, you gain freedom. You can stop tuning into the old broadcast and choose a new one. Think of it like wiping steam off a mirror. At first, all you see is fog, distortion, confusion. But the moment you wipe it clean, the reflection is clear. The reflection didn't suddenly appear. It was always there, waiting for clarity. So here's the question. Are you going to keep believing you're the character locked in a script, or are you going to step back and realize you're the one holding the pen? Awareness doesn't erase your past, but it dissolves its control over your future. Once you know you're the observer, you're no longer trapped. You're free to tune into something new. And that leads us to the next act. If you're not the story, then what story do you choose to live? Once you realize you are not the old story, a new question appears. If I am not defined by the past, then what story do I choose to live now? This may sound obvious, but most people never actually make the choice. They spend their lives describing what they don't want. I don't want to be broke. I don't want to be anxious. I don't want to be alone. But here's the problem. The subconscious doesn't process negatives. It only hears the focus: broke, anxious, alone. It's like putting "not here" into your GPS and expecting it to guide you. The system doesn't understand not. It just needs a destination. Without one, you keep circling the same block. Think of a sculptor. The marble slab is formless, full of potential. If he says, "I don't want a block," the stone remains untouched. But if he holds the image of David in his mind, Every strike of the chisel reveals it. Life works the same way. The quantum field doesn't need you to obsess over what you lack. It needs clarity about what you are choosing. And clarity doesn't mean knowing the details of how. You don't need to map out every step. The how is encoded in the field itself. Infinite paths already exist. Your job is simply to select the outcome. Science supports this. In the brain, the reticular activating system acts like a filter. Once you set a clear intention, the RAS begins highlighting information that aligns with it. You've experienced this. You decide you want a certain car, and suddenly you see it everywhere. It's not that the car magically multiplied overnight. It's that your mind started filtering reality differently. The same principle applies to bigger desires. The moment you choose your reality, your mind and energy begin reorganizing to support it. But here's the paradox. Most people avoid clarity because it feels risky. Once you declare what you want, you can no longer hide behind vagueness. The gap between where I am and what I've chosen becomes visible, and that gap triggers fear. So people stay vague. They say, I just want to be happy, or I want things to improve. But without specifics, their signal is scattered. The field mirrors their indecision. The truth is, clarity doesn't create pressure. It creates power. The moment you declare your target, you stop tuning into everything else. I once knew a writer who complained constantly of writer's block. He said, I just want to stop being blocked. But his focus remained on the block. His subconscious tuned into stuckness, and every attempt reinforced it. Then one day, he made a simple shift. He stopped fighting the block and instead declared, I am a creator who writes with freedom. That clarity reorganized everything. Ideas began flowing. His energy shifted. Within weeks, he finished projects he had been delaying for years. The field wasn't ignoring him before. It was responding faithfully to his lack of clarity. The moment he chose, the block dissolved. Think of light. When scattered, it's weak, but when focused into a laser, it becomes powerful enough to cut through steel. Your awareness works the same way. When scattered across fear, doubt, and vague hopes, it has little effect. But when you focus it on one chosen outcome, it amplifies into coherence, and coherence is what the field responds to. Let's anchor this right now. Type this in the comments below. I choose the reality where I already belong. Don't just type it casually. Write it as a declaration. The moment you name your reality, you stop scattering your energy. You've set your coordinates. This isn't about convincing the algorithm. It's about convincing yourself. By declaring it, you align your awareness with your choice. This is the power of choosing. Without clarity, you're circling the same loop. With clarity, you've aimed your signal. But clarity alone isn't enough. Once you've chosen, you must embody it. You can't just name the reality. You have to step into the state of being the person who already lives there. That's what we'll explore next. You've made the choice. You've declared your new reality. But clarity by itself isn't enough. You can't just name the destination. You have to step into the state of being the person who already lives there. Because here's the truth. The universe doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your state. Think about affirmations. Millions of people repeat phrases like, I am abundant, or I am loved. But if those words are spoken from a state of fear or doubt, the signal is fragmented. The field doesn't hear the words, it hears the vibration beneath them. It's like sending a text with no signal. The message is typed, but it never delivers. This is why so many people feel frustrated with techniques. They're saying the right words, but their body is broadcasting the opposite frequency. Imagine an actor preparing for a role. The script may say king, but if the actor slouches, mumbles, and carries himself like a servant, the audience won't believe him. The role becomes real only when he embodies it, the posture, the voice, the presence. Reality works the same way. The script you've chosen is meaningless until you play the role. Physics gives us another analogy. When you strike a tuning fork, only another fork with the same frequency will begin to vibrate. That's resonance. Your reality functions in exactly the same way. You don't attract what you want, you attract what you are resonating with. That's why Neville Goddard's famous line still holds true: you attract not what you want, but what you are. I knew a man who constantly affirmed, "I am wealthy." He said it daily, wrote it in journals, even recorded it on his phone. But every time he repeated it, his stomach clenched with anxiety. Deep down, he was broadcasting lack. The breakthrough came when he stopped forcing the words and asked instead, "What does it feel like to already be secure?" He began practicing the state of ease, relaxing his shoulders, breathing more slowly, walking with confidence. Within weeks, his outer world shifted. Unexpected opportunities opened. It wasn't magic, it was coherence. He stopped broadcasting contradiction and tuned into the frequency of security. Neuroscience explains why this works. When you think a thought with enough emotion, the brain signals chemicals that make the body feel it. That feeling becomes a loop. Thought creates feeling. Feeling reinforces thought until it becomes identity. So when you consistently practice the state of your chosen reality, your brain and body begin to hardwire it as truth. This isn't wishful thinking, it's biology. Think of Wi-Fi. You can know the password, but until you actually enter it, you can't access the network. Words are like knowing the password. State is entering it. The moment you embody the feeling, you're logged in. Here's the key. The quantum field isn't convinced by effort. It isn't swayed by repetition alone. It responds instantly when your thoughts, emotions, and body line up. That alignment is state. When you walk, talk, breathe, and carry yourself as though your reality is already true, you're no longer wishing. You're broadcasting coherence, and coherence is what collapses potential into form. So ask yourself, what does it feel like if this is already true? That question cuts through doubt. It bypasses effort. It invites you to step into the vibration now, not later. Because the moment you embody the state, you've tuned the fork. And once you're resonating, reality has no choice but to match. This is the power of state. Words set the direction. State sets the frequency. But like any frequency, one strike isn't enough. To truly shift, you must stabilize it, keep it resonating until it becomes your new baseline. And that's where we go next. You've chosen your new reality. You've stepped into the state. But here's the next challenge. One glimpse of a new frequency isn't enough. You must stabilize it. Because the truth is, most people touch the state once, maybe twice, and then drift back into their old broadcast. They have a powerful meditation or a few days of feeling aligned, but soon they're right back to old habits, old emotions, and old assumptions. It's like striking a tuning fork once and expecting it to hum forever. Without reinforcement, the vibration fades. Think of wet cement. If you press your hand into it once and walk away, the imprint will fade. But if you keep pressing the same pattern while the cement hardens, eventually it sets. The impression becomes permanent. Your subconscious works the same way. Each repetition of the state presses the imprint deeper until it hardens into identity. Another analogy: imagine walking through a field of tall grass. The first time the blades spring back. The second time there's only a faint trail, but walk the same path every day, and soon it becomes a clear track. That's what happens when you revisit the state of your chosen reality. You create a neural path in the brain and an emotional path in the body. Over time, it becomes automatic. But repetition alone isn't enough. Emotion is the amplifier. Science shows that neurons that fire together wire together, but they wire much faster when emotion is involved. That's why moments of intense joy, fear, or love feel unforgettable. The emotion burns the memory into you. So when you lock in your chosen state, you don't just repeat it mechanically. You charge it with feeling. You imagine, embody, and amplify it until your body believes it's real. There was a woman who longed for peace in her family. She practiced visualizations of calm dinners and loving conversations. But she only did it sporadically. The rest of the time she slipped back into expecting conflict. One day she committed to practicing daily. Each morning she sat quietly and felt the peace she wanted to live. She didn't just think about it. She breathed it, embodied it, and carried it into her day. At first, nothing changed, but after weeks, her children began mirroring her calm. Her spouse softened. The arguments dissolved. The shift wasn't instant, but it became inevitable because she pressed the imprint every day until peace became the family's baseline. Neuroplasticity explains this. Every time you rehearse a state, you're firing a set of neural pathways. Do it once, and the effect fades. Do it repeatedly, with emotion, and the pathways strengthen. Eventually, they become the default. It's like learning to drive. At first, every movement is conscious, but repeat it enough, and it becomes automatic. You no longer try to drive, you just drive. That's what happens when you lock in a new state. At first it feels like effort, but with consistency, it becomes second nature. Here's the truth. Most people fail at reality shifting, not because they don't know the principles, but because they don't persist long enough to let the cement harden. They touch the state once and expect fireworks. But shifting isn't about a spark. It's about consistency. It's about pressing the same signal until it becomes unshakable. This doesn't mean endless hours of work. Locking it in can be as simple as taking a minute, several times a day, to breathe into your chosen state, to remind your body, this is who I am now. Over time, those small practices outweigh years of conditioning. The brain rewires, the body memorizes, the field responds. This is what it means to lock it in, to practice your chosen state until it becomes your default. But there's one more step, because even once the state becomes familiar, it has to move beyond practice and into daily life. It has to integrate so deeply that it feels ordinary, and that's what we'll explore next. You've chosen your reality. You've stepped into the state. You've practiced it until it begins to take root. But there's still one final shift that makes everything stick: integration. Because here's the truth, as long as your new state feels like practice, it will always sit slightly apart from your real life. It will feel like a special exercise, something you do for a few minutes each day, and then leave behind when you return to normal. But reality doesn't shift when your practice is separate. It shifts when your practice becomes your normal. Integration is when the line between doing it and living it disappears. Think of learning a new language. At first, you study vocabulary lists and practice phrases in a notebook. It feels awkward, mechanical. You have to think about every word. But the breakthrough comes when you start living in it, ordering coffee in that language, chatting casually, even thinking in it. The moment it stops being a practice and starts being ordinary life, fluency arrives. Reality shifting works the same way. Your chosen state becomes fluent only when you live in it day by day, moment by moment. Integration isn't about grand gestures. It's about micro-actions that serve as proof to your subconscious. If you've chosen abundance, maybe it's leaving a slightly larger tip than usual. If you've chosen love, maybe it's softening your tone in a conversation where you'd normally get defensive. If you've chosen peace, maybe it's pausing before reacting to stress. Each action is like a stamp, reinforcing the identity. This is who I am now. Over time, those micro-actions accumulate until your subconscious no longer questions the shift. It accepts it as the new baseline. Think of a river carving through rock. The first drops seem insignificant, but over time the steady flow shapes valleys. Integration works the same way. You don't force massive change all at once. You let the steady flow of aligned actions reshape your life naturally. There was a man who had always seen himself as unlucky in love. He practiced affirmations, visualized happy relationships, and even felt moments of deep alignment. But the shift didn't last. Then he began integrating. Instead of waiting for love to arrive, he asked, "How does a loving partner behave?" He started speaking more kindly to himself, keeping promises he made to his own schedule, even setting his table for two at dinner. At first it felt small, even silly, but those daily signals rewrote his subconscious identity. Months later, when a relationship did appear, it didn't feel miraculous. It felt natural. He was already living as someone who belonged in love. That's the power of integration. Behavioral science supports this. Habits are not just actions. They are votes for an identity. Each time you act in line with your chosen state, you reinforce the belief, this is who I am. And once identity shifts, behavior follows effortlessly. You no longer force yourself to act differently. You act differently because you are different. Here's why integration is essential. Without it, your new state risks becoming a ritual you perform but never embody. You meditate for 15 minutes in the morning, but return to stress the moment the day begins. You affirm abundance at night, but spend the day worrying about bills. That gap tells your subconscious the state isn't real. It's just an exercise. Integration closes the gap. It makes your chosen reality indistinguishable from your lived reality. The ultimate sign of integration is that your new reality stops feeling like a performance. You no longer ask, am I doing it right? You simply live it. It feels ordinary, but that's the point. What once seemed like a dream becomes so woven into your life that you forget it was ever out of reach. That's when reality has truly shifted. Integration is the final thread. It's what transforms a fragile practice into a solid way of being. And when you reach this stage, you realize something profound. The reality you longed for was never waiting in the future. It was always here, waiting for you to live it. Which brings us to the final act, tying it all together and remembering that you are not waiting for your new reality. Your new reality has been waiting for you. We've traveled a long way together, so let's bring all of this into one clear picture. You began this guide feeling the weight of life's repetition, the same routines, the same emotions, the same loops that made it seem as though nothing would ever change. You discovered that the real reason for the loop wasn't the universe ignoring you, but your own unconscious tuning, broadcasting the same signal again and again. From there, we uncovered the illusion of effort, that more rituals, more affirmations, and more forcing don't bring results. Effort anchored in lack only mirrors lack. Reality doesn't bend to struggle, it bends to resonance. Then came the shift in perspective, understanding that reality isn't built from scratch but tuned into like a radio station already broadcasting, waiting for you to align. Science called it superposition. Spirituality called it living in the end. Both pointed to the same truth. You're not creating reality from nothing. You're selecting from what already exists. But to select a new reality, you had to take the next step. Awareness, to stop confusing yourself with the character in the story. And remember, you are the observer. Like the chessboard, you're not the pawn. Like the movie theater, you're not the actor on the screen. You are the awareness that remains, free to choose again. And with that awareness, you ask the most important question: what story do I choose now? Not what you don't want, not vague hopes, but a clear declaration of the reality you are tuning into. The GPS analogy showed us, without a destination, you circle the same block, but the moment you choose clearly, the field reorganizes. Then came the step of embodiment. Words alone don't shift reality. State does. Just as an actor must embody the role to make the audience believe, you must embody the state of the person who already lives your chosen reality. Resonance is the password, coherence the signal. But one strike of the tuning fork isn't enough. You learn to lock it in, to practice consistently, with emotion until the state hardens into identity, like wet cement, like a path in the grass. Repetition makes it permanent. Finally, you integrated. You stopped treating your new state as a ritual and wove it into daily life. You spoke, acted, and lived from it until it became ordinary. And that ordinariness was the proof. What once felt like a dream became natural. What once felt impossible became obvious. Think of an apple on a tree. For months it ripens quietly, invisibly, until one day it falls. Not because of struggle, not because of effort, but because gravity was always there. Your new reality is the same. It doesn't arrive because you force it. It arrives because you aligned with the law that was always pulling it toward you. If there's one lesson to carry from this guide, it's that simplicity is not weakness. Simplicity is mastery. The ego craves drama, but the universe responds to coherence. The clearer your signal, the faster reality aligns. I once heard someone describe their breakthrough like this. For years I chased abundance, repeating affirmations until I was exhausted. But the moment I decided to live as though it was already here, to walk, breathe, and choose from that state, life shifted, opportunities appeared, the struggle ended. Their story wasn't about luck, it was about coherence. So here's the truth. You are not waiting for your new reality. Your new reality has been waiting for you. It's not in the future. It's not something you earn after years of struggle. It exists here and now, broadcasting, ready for you to tune in. The loop ends the moment you decide to step out of the old story, declare your choice, embody the state, lock it in, and integrate it into life until it feels ordinary. So take a deep breath right now. Whisper it if you want. I already am. Let that settle in your chest. Let your body feel it. Because the moment you believe it, you're no longer chasing. You're resonating, and resonance collapses timelines faster than effort ever could. This is the secret most people overlook. Not because it's hidden, but because it's too simple for the rational mind to accept. But now you know, and once you know, you can't unknow it. So carry this with you. The field is not testing you. It is not withholding. It is listening right now, and it will always mirror who you are being. You don't have to wait. You don't have to force. You only have to choose, embody, and live it. Because the life you've been asking for has been broadcasting all along, and today you've learned how to tune in.